Joins me now, Arizona Republican John Shadegg is on the House Energy and Commerce Committee. Congressman, welcome. Good to have you here.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. That is an interesting question, because when you hear that each one of these companies has their plan for how much boom they have and what they would do if something like this happened to them, it is striking that the White House did not call on all these companies to rally together at the onset.
Right. And I really had two motivations for asking the question. Number one was, I think most Americans want first and foremost to have this stopped and cleaned up. And so I want to know if they really did have any more resources that they could bring to bear. But the second question was, who had asked them, and what did come out, and I'm sorry their answers weren't a little louder and a little clearer, is that neither the president nor the White House ever contacted any of them. I don't know why the president didn't call them into a meeting and say, hey, this is happening, you're all in the business, what can you add and how can you help? That didn't happen. What they did say had happened is that as an industry, they offered assistance to BP because they had some resources that they thought might help.
Yeah, and did they all provide that help to BP?
Yes. Each one of them indicated they had given BP everything that they had, everything they could bring to bear. I suppose they could, if the president were pushing them, as hard as, for example, he's pushing this moratorium, I think they might have been able to come up with other resources, but he clearly has not done that.
Now, these talks with these CEOs are ongoing today. When they all went through their plan, if this were to happen at our company, here's what we would do. I know there were a lot of disappointments because a lot of them basically sounded like they were in the same boat as BP. They all cited this same dead expert who, is no longer with us, and he's one of the people that they would call in the case of an emergency. But did you get any sense that BP is acting differently, is an anomaly, is this case an anomaly compared to the way other companies work?
I think it clearly is. I think we are beginning to learn as a nation that BP has a consistent record of being unsafe, of violations, in some instances having been cited 700 times for various violations for which the other companies have either never been cited or they've been cited a handful of times. And I have picked up from, just as a member of Congress asking around, asking questions, that the other executives of the other major oil companies were concerned that BP was cutting corners, but as competitors, there was not much they could do about it. I think this was a human, not a system failure, and I put in the record at the hearing an article which documents that it was a human failure, that BP saw lots of safety violations, lots of reasons why they shouldn't have proceeded. They didn't have the well adequately capped with concrete, and there were not the right indications that they could pump out the mud and put in seawater, and they just proceeded in an unsafe fashion. The
other thing that's interesting from your line of questioning with them is that the White House didn't pick up the phone and call the CEOs of any of these companies to say, what can you all do as an industry? We know that Tony Hayward was not, spoken to by the president in the early stages, but that's going to happen tomorrow. What are your expectations for that meeting, Congressman?
Well, clearly the president is going to put BP under pressure to put up a fund. He has no legal authority to do that, but I don't think that's where we ought to be focused. I think one of the biggest concerns right now is, as your program just showed, how much more damage is the moratorium doing? The president and that hearing yesterday focused kind of looking backward, but we're causing additional damage by a moratorium that appears to be overly broad. And that's the other thing I tried to put into the record. It's pretty stunning that 8 scientists wrote a report for the Interior Department saying that that report was then altered. They've now written a letter saying that the report was changed after they turned it in, and that they in fact don't support the moratorium. You just heard a gentleman on your show in that area saying, look, the moratorium is going to do as much damage as the spill to that part of the country. Yeah, that's something I think we need to be looking into.
That the people who are getting hit hardest by the oil also don't want to be hit hardest by the moratorium. They're the ones who are the loudest voices asking the president to lift that moratorium. John Shadegg, Congressman, thank you very much. Good to talk to you today, sir.
My pleasure.
So we'll see what impact we have on stocks today, right? Check it out.